when you're an editor, you learn what you need. So as you start to edit, you'll go, oh, I could have used this. I could have used that. I should have gotten this. Which then when you're shooting, you start to know, oh, I know I'm going to need this. I know I'm going to need that.
They go hand in hand, yeah.
Yeah.
They only gave me pieces.
Ah.
Where's the one shot that puts the whole story together?
Okay.
They never shot it.
The wide shot.
What?
Yeah,
I like who goes to a fire and never shoots a fire. A wide shot. Like who does that?
Yeah, you need that establisher. That you know, if you were to look at it from a 40-second news video standpoint, you need that first 5 seconds to say this is a house fire. For me, I'm more of like the front end of it.
I'm just making it up. Of a similar nature or character.
JMKast. JMKast.
But we get shocked often by Chris.
You Google my name, it always pulls up Ric Flair and Blackjack Mulligan. That's another story for another time, though. And that other story for another time could be today, folks.
All right.
Oh, really?
Maybe.
Hey, subscribe, comment, like, ask questions.
Share with your friends.
Do
Please share with
cartwheels in your
friends.
front yard. I mean, whatever.
Who do we have here?
I want to see. We're not there yet. Relax. Jesus.
Who do we have? What do you mean? Harvey?
No.
I was going to say introduce yourself.
For
Isn't that a
us.
thing?
Oh.
Listen to him jumping the gun. I was getting there. God, you're so impatient, Harvey.
He listens to podcasts and he's an expert already.
I'm Ric Mulligan.
I'm Greg T. Johnson.
And you are?
My name is Harvey Mulvihill. I'm an expert on podcasts.
He's an expert. Nice. And then we got another guy on the phone who gets to say something eventually.
Chris Palmer.
He says so casually.
It's funny to me because I'm so used to the podcast that I did a long time ago. I was the guy on the phone. So it's weird to have the guy on the phone that's not me.
What was your previous podcast that you did?
It was called Tanked Radio. It was a tech news, offbeat news, video games, movie reviews, and anything else we want to talk about. Yeah. That was I don't know how I still remember that. That's fun. But I was the movie guy, and our movie rating scale was awesome. It was Runaway, DVD, Pay Full Price, See It Twice, and Holy Matrimony.
I like it.
I just thought it was a great rating scale. We just came up with it. We were just messing around one day, and that's how we came up with it. But Runaway, we never had a Runaway. We had a bunch of DVDs, and then we only had 1 or 2 Holy Matrimonies.
That's okay.
Anyway, that's enough.
Yeah. We're going to talk about video production in the first 3 minutes today.
No, we won't.
Yes, we are. We're going to do it right now. It's at 2:20 something, and we're going to talk about this. So, this is an idea from Chris.
Okay.
Little topic. So for someone that wants to do what we would do, suggest they learn to shoot first or edit first?
I learned to edit first.
I learned to edit first.
Wow. That's such an interesting way to look at it.
Harvey learned to edit first.
I have an opinion, though, with
Chris. What did you
experience.
do?
I mean, since I was little, I messed around with my video cameras, so I shot stuff. But in a professional setting, like I learned to edit first, and then I started picking up cameras and going out and practicing shooting.
So, as the outsider here, Harvey, what's your?
I would say learn to shoot first, but I don't. I mean, I'm picturing like a 19-year-old who's just trying to figure out how to do this, not a professional, and someone that's entering the industry for real. I mean, that person is going to pick up their phone and shoot some stuff, and then. Not until later you're gonna be like, well, how do I make that into something interesting? Edit seems like the secondary process to the first part. So
here's what you'll find as an editor, and Greg could definitely, because we talked about this. When you're an editor, you learn what you need. So as you start to edit, you'll go, oh, I could have used this. I could have used that. I should have gotten this. Which then when you're shooting, you start to know, oh, I know I'm going to need this. I know I'm going to need that.
They go hand in hand, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
I think editor first, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think editing first definitely helps someone become a better shooter.
Sure.
I won't say that shooting first necessarily means you'll be a worse editor, but I think definitely having the ability to see what other people do and what you need to put together something gives you the, like Rick said, the parameters of being able to see, well, I didn't get that shot or that shot that would have really told the story. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. When I was at a previous station before and I was just editing, there was like a fire. Someone was sent to a fire, house fire, and they shot like some real close shot of a flame and shot a part of the fire truck and maybe the fire hydrant and then part of a window. What's missing out of those shots? That, like, what do you not have out of what I just described?
Is that a real question?
That is a real question.
What do you say? Sorry, window.
Piece of a window, some flame, a fire hydrant, part of a fire truck,
hose, house.
You're just giving me, like, they only gave me pieces. Where's the one shot that puts the whole story together?
Okay.
They never shot it. They
The
never
wide
shot
shot.
it. What? I like, who goes to a fire and never shoots a wide shot? Like, who does that?
Yeah, you need that establisher. That if you were to look at it from a 40-second news video standpoint, you need that first 5 seconds to say this is a house fire.
Of course,
Yeah. I mean, otherwise it's like it's like a collage of this was a fire.
And sometimes when you're shooting something, and you're telling a story, sometimes you're going to reveal something a minute into the piece. So sometimes when you're telling the story, you sit down and you start to put it together, and you're like, well, let's not reveal right away that this happened to this person, or I've trying to think of an example. Maybe show someone that's a track star, but you never show their feet, and you show. For the first minute of the story, all you see is this person running, and then a minute or a minute and a half into the story, you reveal, oh, he's missing a leg. He's running on one leg. There's ways sometimes to you sit there and say, oh, this guy's amazing. He's won all these gold medals. He's done all these things, and then you're like, oh my God, he only has one leg. So sometimes you want to reveal those things, and that becomes in an editor. When you learn to put that story together from the editing standpoint, you realize as a shooter, like, oh, how do I hide those things? Because sometimes you have to, especially if you're going to be the editor, you have to know, okay, well, we're going to reveal this slowly. So I got to make sure to shoot it in a way that I have those options to be able to do that. Because if you just showed a bunch of wide shots where all you see is his foot the whole time, how are you going to hide it?
Right. Yeah, you want like the camera pointing at his face and it slowly pans down.
And there's all kinds of different...
right before you hit his...
Yeah. There's all kinds of different ways to do it. And the three of us have such different... I think I would agree that the three of us have very different news backgrounds.
4 of us.
No. I'm the 3 of us that have worked in the news industry. Yeah. I'm saying have very different news backgrounds. So I was very much the meat and potatoes, like cutting VOSOTs, cutting things where it's just pictures and some sound bites, as opposed to Greg, who was in the field, was doing much more packaged based stuff where everything was put together in more long form story. Even though there's long form is only 1.5 to 2 minutes. And then Chris, I think you kind of a little bit of everything, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Started out, of course, doing VOSOTs, and then I ended up sometimes doing 2 or 3 packages for one newscast because either VOTOT got sent out on something else, or they weren't going to get paid overtime, so it got dumped off to me. So I love doing packages compared to VOSOTs.
Man, certain stations that I worked for would have abused the snot out of you. Like you'd have been burnt out, man. They would have abused you so bad.
Yeah.
For the folks at home, what is a package?
Well, early one?
Word of the day.
Word of the day.
I like it.
All right. Well, that is now officially word of the day.
Intro music for word of the day.
So I'll say there's 3 words of the day then.
Okay.
We'll go VO.
Okay.
SOT.
Okay.
4 words. VOSOT and package.
Okay.
So VO is just voiceover. So it's just pictures that someone is going to talk over.
Okay.
It's your standard VO. SOT is a sound on tape.
Okay.
Which is going to be
an interview, press conference, sound from press conference, whatever.
The firefighter telling you that the house is a total loss. VOSOT is typically when those things are put together. So there might be VO and then it trails into a SOT or vice versa.
Sometimes they'll call it a VOSOT VO.
Correct.
Right.
Or
That means
Satvo.
there's VO trailing after the side.
Or Satvo, which is sound and then VO.
For clarification, the difference between the two is like with VO, you are literally watching something and voicing it as it's happening.
Correct. The
Whereas,
person
like,
is-
you're on site for the other one for SOT.
No, so when you're watching a newscast, you'll see, Cynthia Zagari will be standing there and she'll be like, this afternoon there was a fire in the third blah, blah, blah.
Image of the house.
And you'll see the house and
image
you'll
of
see the fire and you'll see the stuff. And then she'll pause. And typically she's not going to tell you, we're going to hear from the fire chief. She just stops talking. And then the fire chief comes up and says, the house is a total
the
loss.
house was a total loss.
And, thankfully no one died and, everyone will be okay. And then it'll go
then
to,
she goes back to talking again.
And it's usually
then
more
like,
VO.
Okay, there's some flame. There's a kid in a blanket, whatever. And she's still talking about whatever, no one was hurt, blah, blah, blah. And then on to the next story, which was a package.
and a package is typically put together ahead of time.
Self-contained.
So it's, yes, there's a reporter voicing over elements, but it's literally a reporter, a soundtrack or soundbite, a reporter, a soundbite, a reporter, a soundbite. Not necessarily in that order, but so it's put together in usually a minute to minute and a half contained element, and that is played by itself as a piece. So at the beginning, Cynthia will say there was a fire in the third, on 3rd Street this week. It was crazy. Here is Ralph Wiggum to tell you more. And it cuts to that person. The package rolls its course. And then typically at the end, they'll say, thank you to whoever that is. And they,
It'd be great correspondent, by the way, Wiggum.
Ralph
killer.
Wiggum.
Yeah,
I thought
Ralph
he'd be-
Wiggum.
Yeah, right.
Oh.
Ralph would be perfect. He'd just sit there and,
Tastes like burning. I'm in trouble.
So those are the elements that we dealt with in the news industry on a regular basis. It was VOSATs, SOTVOs, packages, VOs, SOTs, things like that.
Got it. Well, let me ask you this then. I'll start with Greg. I want to hear your origin story before all of this business. How did you get into this industry? Actually, let's just take me all the way back. Where are you from? Where'd you grow up?
He was a young whippersnapper.
Yeah.
Oh my
in like
goodness.
the 10s or 20s or whatever.
And Harvey just got fired.
Wow.
Been a short run, Harvey.
Do I really
Enjoy
look
working with you.
that
No, you don't. I'm playing.
Oh, man.
Ugh.
That was
Now I feel
cold.
just based
Greg
on that.
Greg is the oldest out of all of us, though, but
That is
not
true.
not that old.
I really shouldn't. What's the expression? Go to the bathroom where I eat.
Yeah, when the guy who cuts your checks, you shouldn't make fun of him.
Just kidding, Greg.
I should take the case back.
After all you've done for me.
And takes his backsies.
For real though, where'd you grow up?
Well, okay, you want the whole story. I don't know if I feel like the whole story.
Maybe something brief.
Yeah. Oh, God. My story is not brief. I kind of like Chris. I goofed around when I was a kid and pretended to be like a radio DJ. And we had like a little 8mm film camera, and I would shoot movies. I got to high school and I got really into music, specifically like orchestral and jazz. And I ended up going to Baylor and pursued music there. And then fast forward a little bit, and I ended up at this other university. Went to this other university where I got a tour of the campus. I'm going to keep pursuing music because that's what I was doing before. And I'm walking through the arts building, and I come across this one room that says TV studio. Mm-hmm. And I see that on the door, and I open it up. I see lights, I see cameras, I see all kinds of. I'm like, ooh,
He sees action.
interesting. And then right next door to it, there's this other door, and it's labeled TV control room. So I open that. It looks like mission control room from NASA with all the, monitors and things with knobs and, whatever. I'm looking at that, and it just kind of takes me aback because also as a kid, one of the things I used to love going down to NASA to just, tour and look at it. And I always wanted to be part of the mission control.
Houston,
center.
we have a problem.
Yes. I see the control room and I'm just like, wow. And here I'm about to start continuing my music up again. And I'm like, man, I never even considered to study or anything to do with television. And I remember being as a kid, messing around with all that stuff. And so I just kind of look real quickly, at what do they offer? Like what kind of programs and things, looked into it real quick. And then I ended up just for the heck of it, I signed up for some courses.
Very cool.
And when I started doing the TV stuff, I just it was like being a kid again and just playing in a playroom, like doing whatever. And, I was making like little mini dramas and whatever, and getting to just take out the cameras and going on football games and shooting highlights and, whatever. Everything was it was just fun. And I was like, anyway, I just said bye-bye to the music and hello to TV. And from there, I went to Nickelodeon, where I had done an internship and got put on several shows there.
Legends of the Hidden Temple.
Yes, I've been on Legends of the Hidden Temple. But spent some time in Nickelodeon and then returned back to Texas, worked for a production company. There's so many years in between. The story could go on forever. I was working at the production company, and I was kind of in the same. I was a boss, and I would hire people as contractors. And some of the people I used, they worked at news stations. They said, "Hey, we need some help." And it was kind of weird since I was kind of the boss or whatever to them, but I applied for some graphics position because I was a manager of graphics. I got in there at Fox 4 in Dallas. And then there's a lot of sitting around time waiting to do stuff. And I always kind of wanted to get into editing. And so I would just go downstairs and I would see where the scripts were and got to know the chief editor and said, hey, this is what I want to do. And she's like, all right, here's some scripts. Just play with it for a while and I'll see what you do and we'll move from there. And next thing you know, they have me filling in for vacations and whatnot. And I'm basically, I'll get booked a week for editing and have to tell my graphics person it's going to be hard for me to do any graphics this week because I'm doing editing. I applied for a job in San Antonio and got hired in San Antonio as just straight up editor and could say bye-bye to graphics and CG and all that kind of stuff I was doing because I made money doing it. Mm-hmm. I guess I was kind of good at it back then, the way you did it. But I never wanted to do that. That's just it was kind of like the job I put myself into to where I could do TV work.
Yep.
And sometimes you just got to do that to keep staying in the biz.
Sure.
That's what I did. And then from San Antonio, that's where I really got into shooting. I was an editor, but then I would go do football and they would hey, you're actually pretty good at this. And I would next thing some news stories, and next thing they got me packages, and next thing they're telling me to go out of town with the main anchor, and I'm still just the editor. I'm like, what's wrong with this story? But I returned back to Dallas. I worked for CBS 11, and then from CBS 11, I finally go to Channel 8, where I spent 17 years. And I also was at a marketing company of Fleischmann for a little bit of time, and that's where I got to meet Andy, who you've met.
Yes, very cool.
And Andy is crucial because that's how JMK got formed.
That's awesome.
No Andy,
No.
no JMK. And that's the truth.
Had he not called Greg and said, "Hey, I got some videos I need shot. You think you could help me?" It wouldn't have happened. And so just kind of.
And I met Andy at Fleischmann because he was my boss at AT&T. So I'd go over to AT&T. I spent more time at AT&T than I did Fleischmann. Actually, I probably spent more time out of town than either of those.
I was going to say, I think you're out of town.
I was on the road probably 20 days a week or 20 days a month.
Wow.
When I was on that job. Yeah. Lots of travel.
Did you like the travel or was it exhausting? Did you like the travel or was it exhausting?
I liked it, but it was exhausting.
Both.
I was putting in a lot of hours.
Yeah.
I went to Puerto Rico. I think I did 100 hours in a week. So
It's cool stuff, man.
Yeah, it's a long story. Sorry.
Been around the block.
I like TV in high school, and it went from there.
And that's another episode. No.
I mean, it's the long and short of it. That's all I did. I just did high school. Loved it in high school. I didn't want to go to college.
He went to a fancy high school.
Well, I went to high school.
Basically what it was.
My high school at the time literally was one of the top video production schools in the country.
Wow.
And
mine had the little cart you wheeled in and you could watch a movie.
Oh no,
on it
ours
if you
had a
wanted.
room. It had a green screen.
Right.
We had control room. We had video. We had editors. I just wanted to edit. I fell in love with editing, and that's all I wanted to do. And then I went to a trade school. Was there for a year, wasted time and money. Then I went to college, whatever, and I ended up getting a job working for
Michigan State.
No, I didn't go to Michigan State. I went to Western Michigan University. I couldn't get into. No, I'm just kidding.
What?
I didn't even try to get into state. I had no urge to go to Michigan State. No. And then at the town that I went to school in had a studio, literally had a TV station right there. And I applied to be a production assistant, which was at the time ripping scripts, running camera, and running teleprompter. So, as I like to call it, getting paper cuts, staying awake, and trying not to fall asleep. Those were the 3 jobs. Oh, and floor directing. But running teleprompter was just awful at 4 a.m. because you would just be like, and you knew you were in trouble when all you heard the anchor go, teleprompter, and you were like, oh crap, or they're yelling. Yeah, I hated teleprompter. Or running scripts, it was always you'd get paper cuts constantly from ripping scripts, so it was awful.
Hey, side story.
Yeah,
The only place I've ever been to in Michigan,
yeah.
Kalamazoo.
Kalamazoo is awesome. It's a great town. I'm going back
I
in
just
October.
find that weird that that's the only place I've been to.
I'm going to go in October. It's a great town.
Isn't that where Western Michigan is?
It is.
I know. I've been on that
Can't
campus.
wait to go. I can't wait to go to Bilbo's and have pizza, and go to Shakespeare's and have pizza, and go to.
It has a good
of good
like
pizza
flight
places.
program or something.
They do. They're one of the
that's-
top ones in the country.
Yep. We were there doing stuff with flight simulators.
Yep. We should have my friend Sean on the show sometime to talk about the academic program at Western and flight simulation if we were a flight podcast, but we're not.
We can do an offshoot episode. Ties into video production.
And then I moved from Texas, which is a whole story in itself. And I was lucky enough to finally get in at 8 and just kind of went from there. And that's where him and I met. And then Andy was like, I need video. And Greg was like, I can shoot some stuff. And he came to me, and we had already tried to do other couple of projects and it didn't work. And Greg's like, hey, do you just want to do this together? Like we can just do it together.
Rick actually just said, I'll give you my stuff. And
Yeah, I was going to let
do
him
it.
use
I'm
my
like,
gear.
No.
And he's like, no, because he didn't know how to use Canon. I had Canon cameras, and then we just shot 3 stories for Encore, and they loved it. And they were like, can you do more of these? And we were like, yeah, we can do as many as you want. And all of a sudden, we just kind of became one of their team.
Nice.
And then after about...
And the business, basically, why we started the business was because I was getting the money, and I didn't want to get the money anymore. I wanted the money
to go to a
in
business
the middle.
account. Mm-hmm. So it just became but it just made sense.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay, how do we grow this? And I mean, for a long
I
time,
wanted the money.
we really haven't even started advertising until the past 3 months. Like before the longest time, it was just word of mouth. It was just somebody who knew something.
Yep.
Like we've only had one.
I have this person.
Yeah, we've really only had one client that we worked with that was a like almost non-referral, so to speak.
Were you
So
guys
it's just-
advertising? Or were we advertising?
Well, we're working on social media platforms, growing our social media presence, which will be a lot of it. And then, I think maybe doing more traditional advertising may happen down the road, but I don't think we're...
Yeah. I mean, it may be within social media.
Our greatest fear, and we've both agreed to this, is wake up tomorrow and all of a sudden there's 40 phone calls and we're like, and we can't meet the demand. So we want to grow at a pace that makes sense, that we can be a high standard.
I mean, if Harvey's ready to go out the door,
Sure.
we feel better about that.
Yeah, but we want to be able to be at that high standard and make our clients happy.
Yeah.
I would hate for a client to be like, well, you got too many clients and you're not keeping me happy and I'm going somewhere else. I don't ever want that.
That makes sense.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and that's the very truncated version of both of our stories because it's much longer.
Wow. Even the JMK story kind of got put in there too.
Yeah, and I mean,
Wow.
And then Chris, I don't know, we found him on the side of the road.
Chris on the side of the road.
What's your story, Chris, briefly?
Briefly, when I was a kid, I was always interested in. I wanted to be a weatherman when I was a kid, basically. But I loved taking pictures and shooting video. And when I was a kid, I'd set up the video camera. I would do the weather. I'd make my brother do the news. I don't think he really wanted to, but too bad. I needed someone to do the news, and so I had a lot of fun doing that. I even made my own little cardboard sets and junk like that. And but I knew I wanted to do something in the news business. And so right out of high school, I go for an interview at the Fox station, and I didn't know anything about 3-point lighting and other technical jargon. And so the guy there said, you know what, maybe take some TV production courses at the San Antonio College, and then we can see down the line. So I was going to UTSA at the time, so I transferred to San Antonio College and got in their TV production program. And 2 months into the semester, I meet someone that's working at that station that I had just interviewed at, and he's like, "Hey, we need people." And I'm like, "Well, I was just there like 6 months ago." And he's like, "No, well, just tell him you're in the classes, you're learning stuff." And so I went back there and talked to him, and he hired me. So I started my in production. So like Rick, running the cameras, teleprompter, I hated, especially this one sports guy that just never followed the prompter, and I'm trying to figure out where the hell he is. And so I hated prompter, and ripping scripts and stuff like that. But late at night, when everyone was gone, I would get on the machines and practice editing because I knew I wanted to make the transfer from production to news. So just trying to figure things out, all these buttons and how works and how you're using. It was just a lot to ingest. And so once I felt comfortable, and then there was finally an opening, I talked to the news director, and they hired me. So I never had any like formal training. I kind of just taught myself how to edit. So I still remember that first weekend I was editing, and they're like, "Hey, we need you to do this package." I'm like, "Well, what the hell do I do with this?" And I was so freaking nervous. I was just like nervous. I'm like, am I going to be able to do this? And just, but I did it, and it turned out, it was fine. I mean, reporters say, "Hey, it turned out good." And from there, I just, I wanted to learn everything I could, not just what my job was. So then I started picking up a camera. Then I would listen to the police scanners, or I'd help write a story or whatever. When I was in production, they have us help out master control and playing the commercials and the shows and stuff like that. So I was there for about 5 years, and then I really wanted to be a reporter, but I didn't want to leave San Antonio. But you kind of had to start out in a smaller market reporting. So I took a break from TV, got into banking, and then some years later, like I missed it. I wanted to get back into it, so I got in at the ABC station. And I did a little bit of everything. I was from a sales assistant to, reception, to helping out with the general manager when his assistant was out, some editing, a little bit of shooting.
Man, you were a jack of all trades.
Also production. So, but then I got laid off because right around that time, I think this is 2008, 2009, the economy was going down. And so I was one of the last hired. So they let like 5 of us go.
Last in, first out.
Yep. So then I was like, you know what? I'm going to try my own business. By this time I was married. My wife was a teacher. And I said, you know what? I'm going to try my own business. So, I'm not a great salesman. And I was trying to do all this myself. So business was slow. I'd have some good months, and then I'd have months where I had nothing. So fast forward a few years later, working in television, I'm going to be working nights, holidays, and I can't do that. I need to be there for my kids. So I went back to college. I never officially got a degree, and I've been working since 2014 on I got my associates, 2 years later my bachelor's, and I'm about a year away from my master's in counseling. And
that's awesome, dude.
This month, I'm actually going to start having my own patients, and as part of my internship. So that's kind of exciting, but nervous at the same time. I'm actually going to be there listening to people.
I am so curious about this. This is a whole other topic I want to ask. I've thought about doing that before, going back to get a degree in that.
I never thought I would.
I minored in psychology in college, and I loved it.
I've always loved it, but I never had the drive to go get the degree until divorce, and I was like, what, I got to do this for my kids. So
I hear you, Chris.
Right before COVID, I was working at the PBS station in San Antonio.
Tell me more.
Kind of like a contract basis. They'd have me come in and just shoot 3 or 4 stories and then edit them, having to do with art and theater and music. And it was different because it wasn't news, and so it was different working at a PBS station. But once COVID hit, the funding for that stopped, and a little bit, not fast forward a little bit, not too long after that, reconnect with Greg. I find out what he's doing, and slowly we've gotten to this point.
Cool stuff, man. Well, I appreciate your story. That was great.
Thank you.
I think Greg's trying to.
I was gonna push a button, but I changed my mind.
He was going to Oscar him off.
He was gonna disconnect.
He was going to Oscar
I don't
you
know
off.
if Chris would get the Oscar.
I don't know that he would.
The Oscar off thing. I don't think he would realize how.
How much time he has.
Yeah, it's like 15 seconds if you're lucky. So once the music starts, but I mean, since we are where we are, and we already kind of told the story, Chris, another topic he had was, how difficult was it for us to be able to start JMK during the pandemic?
Shockingly easy.
Honestly, we started it slightly before the pandemic, and I think because of the softwares and things we were already using, and we knew about the clouds and things like that, it enabled us to see the potential.
We also got lucky that Encore wanted a ton of video during the pandemic
Because they wanted to reach out to their employees.
They went content heavy. So when everyone else was, we talked about, it was Greg and I had a point where it was like, well, should we look at getting the PPE loans? Like, we talked about it for a second, and we were both like, we can't justify it. There was no way we could show the government we lost money during that time, because we didn't. We made money during that time. So it's like, if we did it, we would have been taking away from someone who needed it. Granted, there's evidently thousands of people right now. The IRS just hired 80,000 new people to go after PPE, people, but we could have legitimately asked for help, but we didn't need it. We really didn't need it. The business was just, we got lucky. That's the best way I can describe it.
Cool.
Yeah. So, in fact, with Channel 8, we were supposed to take a furlough or something.
Yeah, whatever.
And you could get money that way, and
we didn't need it.
There's no reason to take it.
I worked every single week of the pandemic, 100% of the time.
Yeah, I never missed any time.
And it was like, they very briefly, they laid off 50% of the company, and I just saw them all laying around, hanging out. I was working, and they ended up making just as much money as I was, if not more, by sitting at home. So the power of hindsight is wonderful, but
well,
we're done.
That
on a bright, cheery note.
Like, share, subscribe.
Thanks for
tell
bumming
your
us
friends.
out, man.
Harvey, Chris,
Hey,
thanks for joining
comment,
us.
like,
Thanks,
subscribe, do all these things.
Good meeting you, Chris. This was
Don't
fun.
make us ask
You too.
fake questions.
Bye.
Bye bye.